Some people would say that social media is like listening, but with your eyes. I mean, how many times have you wished as a market researcher that you could sort of be the fly on the wall, right? To watch what your clients do, how they do it, how they talk about your brand. Now with social media, we have that ability. So the benefits, it's about listening versus asking. And again, thanks to advances in our awareness of things like behavioral economics and irrational decision making, we know that sometimes asking has limitations. So now we have a greater opportunity to listen. Also, social media research gives us timely up-to-the-minute data and sheer volumes of data. Many market research methodologies are snapshots in time. This is something we've always known and always accepted. But now we have this other resource that is constantly being updated. Social media techniques are also gaining credibility. Are gaining credibility. And so one of the challenges that we have is that there have been credibility challenges, but they are gaining credibility. We also have free and low-cost options that exist. This is one of the most powerful things right now, frankly, that I hope you take away from this class. If you haven't started to try social media research, there are actually free and low-cost options, and we'll talk about some of them. And this is great because this gives you the chance to experiment with social media research before you spend any real money on these tools. Because there is a continuum, folks. There are some really low-end and even free tools, and then there are tools that are going to cost you $50,000, $100,000 or more per year in order to use. There's just a sheer number of tools available. But there are some challenges. Limited demographics. Demographics are often a very important part of our analysis and market research. So very often we'll have a situation, like if I'm doing consumer research, where it's really important for me to be able to analyze my results by demographics. So if I'm doing consumer research, what are some of the demographics that I might really value? Can somebody give me some examples of consumer demographics? Income, great. What else? Age, excellent. Let's get one more example. Ethnicity, beautiful. Thank you, Stephanie and Pat. So when we're doing consumer research, if we're doing surveys or we're doing focus groups or in-depth interviews, we often look at these things and we want to do analysis. We want to know if awareness of new Coca-Cola products varies by household income, age, or ethnicity. Or if we are Nike and we're doing research to test awareness of a new clothing line, we might want to see if awareness or interest or price sensitivity for that new clothing line varies by household income, age, or ethnicity. And that can often have a really, huge insight for us in research. The challenge with social media research is we don't have that level of demographics consistently. In fact, we typically have very limited demographics when we're doing social media research. So if I'm Nike and I want to test interest in a new line of yoga wear with the Nike brand, it's going to be something that I can do in a survey very easily. I can look at, I can ask people about their interest in this. I can ask that question. I can analyze my results by household income and age. That's not something I'm going to be able to do on social media. First of all, on social media, I can't ask the question of, here's a product that you've not seen yet, please give me your response. But even for something you can do on social media, like just see what people say about Nike clothing, about Nike branded clothing, well, that's great. But I don't know if the positive comments are coming from more from men or women. I don't know if the negative comments are coming more from people from different ethnicities. So I can listen to what people are saying naturally online. I can't ask them questions, but even when I'm listening to a conversation that's important to me, I don't have perfect information about how those attitudes, how those conversations vary by gender, income, or ethnicity. So that's somewhat of a challenge because we market researchers, we love our demographics, right? Now, I will say that there are some very innovative companies that are working on this. They're doing things like inferring from geographies what the likely income is. If I see that this IP address is associated with a certain geographic area, that infers something about possible income. But again, it's an inference, it's not perfect. Still, there is work being done, and I expect there to be some advances in the amount of demographics that we'll get from social media research tools in the next couple of years. But right now, the amount of demographic information we have is limited. And while credibility is improving, there are still some questions, and I'm going to explain why in just a few minutes. Projectability. Well, this really has to do with the demographics, right? Because if I don't have great demographics, it's really hard to know if what is being said is something that can be extrapolated to a broader market. So if I'm Nike and I'm really interested in understanding overall consumer attitudes towards my clothing brand, right? I want to know how people feel about our brand of clothing, not just sneakers, because maybe I'm planning on expanding our clothing lines. That could be a, fairly realistic type of project for Nike to do. If I don't have demographic data, I may have concerns about the projectability of what I'm hearing online to the true offline world. Not everybody's online, right? So there are some concerns that the people who are online, are they or are they not representative of the broader offline market? Now, this is something that has changed over time. This used to be a much greater concern, but it's still somewhat of a concern. But one of the things that is important to understand is how many people are online these days. Does anybody here know how many people have Facebook accounts worldwide? It's an indication of online representativeness. Deborah's saying in the billions, ? Pat's saying 1 million. Any other guesses? It is over 1 billion. There are over 1 billion people on Facebook. And for those of us in market research, let's just say that pretty much makes Facebook the biggest market research panel in the world. So, something to think about. So, does that mean that listening to people online is going to be truly representative of a broader market? Not necessarily, but it's not as big of a gap as we have previously experienced. By the way, there are some ethical concerns with social media research. Basically, what these tools do is they scrape the web. It's sort of an old-fashioned phrase, but it is effectively the same thing. Basically, what these tools do is if you tell the tool that you're interested in conversations about Nike, they go out to all of the public-facing parts of the internet. They will scrape mentions of Nike from public-facing parts of Facebook, blogs, product review sites, news sites, Twitter, etc. How do you think people feel when they find out that their conversations are being scraped and used for market research? Well, on one hand, you might say, look, if you're posting things in public venues, you should know that somebody's going to be listening. But there's a big difference between knowing that you're in a public place and being aware that there are researchers or companies that are actively harvesting your conversations for analysis purposes. Indeed, 3 years ago, there was a very interesting research study done by one of my favorite market researchers, Jeffrey Henning from ResearchScape, about consumer awareness of how their online public data was being used. And that research did indicate that there were many people who had no idea and did not like the idea that their public comments were being harvested and used for analysis purposes by for-profit organizations. Does that mean it's not legal? Absolutely not. It's just that there are some ethical questions. And in fact, two of the largest market research professional associations in the world, the MRA and SMR, have since published ethical standards for social media research. So I'm just going to type that in. So if you want to look that up, you can get copies of their standards. Another challenge with social media listening is that there is somewhat limited access to desirable networks. That is, pretty much most of LinkedIn is behind, sort of a virtual firewall. That is, a lot of the content on LinkedIn is private and can't be harvested. A lot of the content on Facebook is private and cannot be harvested. So there are some networks where there could be really relevant content for your company or for your client's company, but you may not have access to that through these tools.